1:50 a.m. and I can't sleep. My heart was racing and I feel a little bit tight in the chest. I always find my anxiety increase.
This is what living with severe anxiety looks like.
I find it hard to focus because it's almost that my eyes are over-focusing on everything and looking for danger everywhere.
In the midst of a panic attack, you absolutely think you're dying.
That I feel like I can't breathe properly.
It engulfs and crushes its victims.
I describe it as having anxiety in my bones. It's a visceral fear and just despair.
And leaves them feeling helpless and worthless.
My anxiety is a constant voice and a constant thing in the back of my head, just undermining me and cutting me down constantly. My anxiety is totally off the scale.
What do you think the perception of anxiety is in the community?
Weakness. Dead set weakness.
Say to someone you have severe anxiety, and more often than not, the response will go something like this. Why are you anxious? What have you got to worry about? Pull your socks up and get on with it. But that's impossible for the 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men who will experience and be diagnosed with serious anxiety at some point in their lives. So why then do we barely acknowledge this mental illness?
48 hours after I sort of had a bit of a breakdown.
For most of 45-year-old Megan Barrow's life, she's tried to battle, but mostly been beaten by anxiety. At its worst, she endured daily physical panic attacks.
It would be heart palpitations, chest pains. I had really bad chest pains. I'd actually get pain down my left arm. I felt out of body, that I wasn't really alive, so I'm thinking I'm actually dying in that moment. I thought if I move from this couch, I potentially might die.
Megan's severe anxiety manifested as severe agoraphobia, and she was once so paralysed by fear she couldn't leave her lounge room.
And how long did you spend on the couch?
Close to 3 years.
It's extraordinary.
And a lot of the day I would actually have my finger on my pulse, just checking. And I would look outside and think, it's like I'm stuck in a cage. I'm just too scared to get out of there, out of this cage, and I just so desperately want to be normal.
Frustratingly for sufferers, science can't tell us exactly where the illness comes from or give us definite answers about treating it.
When we start talking about anxiety disorders, there's a huge array of these things from, I guess, very specific things like obsessive-compulsive disorder and PTSD, right through to generalised anxiety disorder, which is a sense of just being very, very general, very high chronic anxiety overall as well.
Dr. Patrick Clark from the School of Psychology at Curtin University in Perth studies the anxious brain.
There has been a tendency sometimes for anxiety to be regarded something as the common cold of mental health problems, where people can be seemingly very, very high functioning and do very well professionally and the like, but at the same time be absolutely riven with anxiety in a way that permeates every aspect of their lives and relationships.
Give. How would you rate your anxiety?
Off the scale, my anxiety is crippling. On the outside, I'm looking relatively calm and normal, but on the inside, I'm at the red zone. You know, any tyre squeal or anyone slamming a door, or any kid screaming or anything like that sends me straight into fight-flight mode.
Father of 3, Rob Atkins is used to fighting.
After I sink this.
He was a soldier in the army and then a frontline police officer in Victoria for 22 years. Outwardly, he's a tough guy, but he can't beat anxiety.
Do you get angry?
Oh, terribly so. My anxiety doesn't come out in fear. That's very private, my fear. My anxiety comes out in rage and like controlling, and if I don't respond, then it's then it's a massive level of rage.
Shouting?
Shouting, physically, everything. I was an absolute mongrel to my family.
I'll hike for 5 hours on my own, and it's one of the most beautiful things. It's just
It affects different people differently, but anxiety doesn't discriminate when it chooses its victims.
It gets me out of the city.
As Sarah Wilson knows too well. The magazine editor, television presenter and well-known author has been stalked by the mental illness for as long as she can remember.
I sort of describe it as going down a stream and you're trying to grab onto slippery kind of reeds, but the flow just keeps carrying you down, down, down. And you get down to a point where your rational mind is just no longer able to find a way out.
When Sarah got the opportunity of a lifetime, hosting the opening season of hit show MasterChef, it caused one of her worst anxiety meltdowns.
I didn't cope. I really didn't cope. You know, we were doing 17-hour days. Yeah, it was the perfect storm for an anxious breakdown.
In her mid-30s and publicly very successful, Sarah was privately in crisis.
TV host, magazine editor, businesswoman, model, you're beautiful. Do you think people would be surprised that if we scratch the surface, there's a whole lot going on?
Yeah. I can also pretend, and I've been very seductive at hiding my anxiety. The anxious, we're very good at that. We're very good at, guising it. Billy's reported back positive.
But enough is enough for Sarah Wilson. She says she no longer wants to hide the shame of her anxiety and says acceptance of it is the first step to overcoming it.
You describe anxiety as your mate that you just bounce along with.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's your fuel as well.
Yeah. It's given me a lot of energy. It's also seen me plummet to great depths at times as well. But it's kept me very, very real. And it's a choice as well. I choose now to see my anxiety as a beautiful beast.
Still to come, the groundbreaking research, which might hold the key for sufferers.
You'll feel a bit of a tingling, itchy type sensation.
And the amazing assistance dog.
This is what he did in the muffin break coffee shop.
Giving Rob his life back.
Man's best friend, literally, physically, saved your life.
That's next on 60 Minutes. 5 years ago, anxiety took hold of and broke Rob Atkins, the once tough as nails Australian soldier and police officer. His illness became so bad, he ended up in a psychiatric hospital twice. He took massive amounts of medication and underwent intensive counselling. Now an unlikely solution is giving him his life back.
Dress.
Last year, Rob became one of the first patients in Australia to be teamed up with a highly trained anxiety assistance dog.
Come here.
Jimmy can literally sense Rob's panic and knows just what to do when it gets out of control.
When was the last time that happened?
4 days ago in a shopping centre down the road here.
What'd you do?
He sensed that I was getting more and more agitated because as I was starting to breathe heavier and my legs starting to shake, he popped up, stuck his head onto my lap, pushed into my stomach, and then eventually, Jimmy, up. This is what he did in the muffin break coffee shop. Good boy, good boy. It's okay, I'm all right. I'm okay, Jimmy, visit. So as I'm getting more and more wound up, he nudged into me, and as I didn't respond to him, he ended up jumping up on me.
And that calms you down.
It's the classic slap across the face, come back to us. He brings me back to the present. So I'm like, get out, leave me. Oh yeah, okay, thanks Jimmy.
Jimmy's not just Rob's best friend, he's become his lifesaver. 6 months ago, Rob hit rock bottom. His anxiety spiralled into suicidal thoughts, and Jimmy knew his master was at breaking point.
And and he basically stuck his head over the crux of my arm, gave me just a bit of a lick, and then just put his weight on me.
What a story. Man's best friend, in your case Jimmy, literally, physically saved your life.
Absolutely. It's just that when your mate sits there and goes to you, "Hey, snap out of it, idiot, come with me." Yeah.
We all know what it feels like to be anxious.
Yep.
But most of us don't know what it feels like to be severely anxious, where it is crippling.
Yep. Well, I think in many of its most severe forms, people simply cannot function. They can't leave their own houses. Their worlds shrink and shrink. They become more nervous about engaging with their social networks. They can withdraw from people due to the fear of the stigma attached to it, and it can shrink their world to just about nothing.
Terrible way to live. Debilitating.
Yeah. Oh, hugely, hugely debilitating. Back here at what we call your external occipital protuberance.
In English?
The little bobbly bit at the back of your skull.
At Curtin University in Perth, not knowing enough about anxiety has led Dr. Patrick Clark to some groundbreaking research. He's the first in Australia to use a mix of brain training and neurostimulation.
Tingling, itchy type sensation.
And he thinks it's the key to treatment. His aim is to discover whether my brain can be convinced to concentrate more on happy images from a simple brain training exercise.
This can be changing their pattern of attention for it to work. It can occur.
At the same time, a low electrical current stimulates the part of my brain responsible for calming us down when we feel anxious.
And what are you seeing? Are you seeing anxious people suddenly become less anxious?
What we are finding is very encouraging results suggesting that it can help change, I guess, the patterns of thinking and cognition that we know characterise anxiety, and so help decrease and regulate those levels of anxiety.
Dr. Clark's research is added encouragement for people like Rob, his wife Christy, and their 3 sons, who have all suffered throughout Rob's illness.
And what's kept you going?
Love, I suppose.
That old saying, love is unconditional.
Yeah, and sickness, yeah. But it's been a very, very long road.
Maybe date night's your next step, but Jimmy's got to come along.
Yeah, exactly. Jimmy sleeps with us.
Sneaks up sometimes in the middle of the night, he does.
He does.
What's it cost you, this severe anxiety?
It's nearly cost me my life. It's nearly cost me my family. I don't know what level of damage it's done to my kids, to be honest.
The Atkins family has just moved to the outskirts of Bendigo to help Rob find a quieter life. He says with his family and Jimmy's help, his medication has reduced dramatically and he's finally finding some peace.
Jimmy, will you come up here and say hello to me? You're amazing. You are amazing. You are amazing. And all the viewers will say that. Just magnificent. What a thrill to meet a dog like this and how it's helping you.
He's managed to get me out and about, and
got to learn some table manners.
He's a Labrador, they have none.
Yeah, sure.
Today, there's good news too for Megan Barrow and Sarah Wilson. Both are successfully managing their own anxiety. Sarah has even written a book about living with her illness.
Are you finding a good way?
Yeah, a good way, that's a good way of putting it. It is a good way. Is it perfect? Is it smooth? No. It's up and down all the time, but that's my life.
And there's one more reason to celebrate.
Just ignore it, you have to acknowledge it when you have a 33-kilo Labrador sitting on you. Good boy.
Rob's best mate Jimmy
Smile, Dad.
has now officially graduated from puppy training school.
So where do you hope to land?
I just want to have my kids not scared of me anymore. That's where I hope to land, just being a decent father again.
Hello, I'm Sarah Abo. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.